Hey all, welcome to ShareTreck. It's the 20th of March 2022 and it's a Saturday. So this is our Saturday edition, and based on user feedback, I'm going to try and keep this limited to around 20 to 25 minutes max and not make it too long, but the subject matter is likely to push me a bit further. So what this video is going to consist of is my attempt to do some kind of fundamental analysis and evaluation exercise to find the value of both CRISPR therapeutics as well as BEAM. So let's get started. When it comes to genomics companies, we have a bunch of challenges which prevents most people from being able to do fundamental analysis, and I'm facing the same challenges. To be honest, I'm not very confident of the fundamental analysis I've done today to arrive at valuation of CRISPR, but we should not give up doing something just because there are too many challenges. So I'm being brave enough to put forward my thesis of what should be a price for CRISPR and also BEAM. But I would hope that you can give me your feedbacks in the comment below, and together we can try to come up with a fine-tuned approach of looking at valuation for genomic companies. So having said that, let me just summarize the challenges for you. The main challenges that we have with genomic companies is that, first of all, they do not have a steady revenue stream. They do not have profitable revenue streams for products like pharmaceutical companies do. They are in a cash burn stage in the sense that they are in an investment intensive discovery situation where all the money that they are putting into research may or may not result in an approved FDA drug, and it might probably end up giving you monetary results down the line, or maybe the whole investment is gone down the drain. So we don't know about it. And that's one of the reasons why I published the earlier video about FDA process and how it applies to CRISPR. There I have mentioned some information about what percentage of medicines and therapies pass which stage of FDA approval. So if you haven't seen that video, it's worth having a look. I will try and I'll put a link for that in the description below. And if you look at the genomic companies of today and compare them with the pharma companies, the pharma companies have got multiple line of drugs which are under patent, and they are giving them revenues. And as the revenues start declining, in parallel, they are working on new drugs to get into patents and into revenue stream. So they are in that continuous revenue generation process, which they have kind of mastered. When it comes to genomics, we are not in a situation where the pipeline is running in parallel with therapies already in monetization stage. We are going to reach that stage maybe 3 or 4 years down the line, to the best of my estimation. And therefore, genomic companies are different. Traditional fundamental analysis is done by looking at parameters like price to equity, price to book, and other parameters. And there is a bunch of companies which are all in the similar stage in the industry, in the same industry. So you can compare these ratios for the other companies with the subject company and decide whether the share price of the subject company is overvalued or undervalued. We're not able to do that with genomics companies because they are in different stages of development in the pipeline, and they are not comparable. And also the revenue composition of genomic companies is different. Some genomic companies have got revenues like collaboration and research revenue, like CRISPR Therapeutics has got with Vertex, whereas other genomic companies don't have that. Some companies have got asset in their balance sheet, which is the purchase of the license agreement for CRISPR. So that's a very different category of value. So those are the main challenges that everyone faces, and that's the challenge that I have faced while coming up with this particular approach. So to summarize my approach, what I have done is I have looked at the cost of existing sickle cell disease, and I have used that as a reference price for CTX001, which is CRISPR's solution for sickle cell, and BEAM 101, which is BEAM's solution for sickle cell, and they're all in the trial phase, clinical trial phase. And I'm trying to understand the pricing and profitability issues in general for the business. And I'm taking the EPS and the book value for these two companies and factor them against the stock price to arrive at a factor. And I'm using that in order to arrive at the price for BEAM and CRISPR. So I've taken the EPS and book value for established pharmaceutical companies. And just for the kicks, I've taken Tesla and taken its book value and EPS. Now, before you go and say Tesla is so different, Raj, why are you doing that? I've mentioned that it's just for the kicks. Just assuming that CRISPR and BEAM are going to be Tesla-like companies, then what kind of multiples can you expect? So I'll come to that subsequently in my discussion. But it's more of a choice that we as a society are going to make. A car is not a necessity for most people. And when it comes to buying a car, they have a choice between a second-hand internal combustion engine car. They can buy a new gas car, or they can go for a second-hand hybrid, or they can buy a new hybrid, or they can buy a new electric vehicle. Tesla is manufacturing only EVs. And the multiple value for Tesla is so high. So when you contrast that with the situation of a patient with sickle cell anemia, it's not a choice. It's a necessity to have the cure. When you look at governments looking at their citizens with sickle cell anemia, they are looking at the sickle cell anemia treatment as a necessity because it can save the government a lot of expense which comes from untreated sickle cell anemia and also the duration of treatment that it takes. So I'm just trying to make a value judgment out there. So please bear with me as I go through this approach. So first, to start off with, I have statistics here from National Institute of Health, and they have come up with a price of $460,151 per patient with sickle cell disease for lifetime treatment. So remember, this is a lifetime treatment. They'll keep on coming for recurring treatments in order to maintain a decent quality of life. However, the quality of life is going to be compromised with the problems of getting the treatment and shelling out the money on an ongoing basis. So that is the problem out there. And also it has an impact on their insurance premiums and everything. Interventions designed to prevent sickle cell disease complications and avoid hospitalizations may reduce the significant economic burden of the disease, which is the opportunity gain. That's another cost that is not factored into this, but that has to be added on top of it. So having said that, now let us look at what is the pricing for the CRISPR therapy. So the only pricing indication I have is from Jennifer Doudna's interview with CNBC and also with, I think, med school, duke.edu. Those are the articles that I refer to. And in there, she says that it costs about $2 million a patient for a once and done sickle cell disease treatment. And she also concedes that this is clearly not a price point that will make this available to most people that can benefit from it. I do think that governments and non-profit organizations and employers might decide to contribute because there's a little bit of benefit for all of them. So, of course, there'll be some amount of subsidy that will come into the treatment. Besides, there are a lot of different methods of financing that are possible because various companies have done, various states have gone ahead and negotiated bulk deals with pharmaceutical companies, which reduces costs for treatment like hepatitis C. So government think tanks have been working on finding ways in which drug prices can be brought down without sacrificing innovation. Because if you take away the profit from the drugs, pharma companies will not be motivated to do any research and come up with any further development. Also, cost of lifetime treatment and the cost of pain, discomfort, and lost opportunities could equate to the cost of a once and done treatment in the mind of the patient. So if a sickle cell anemia patient is looking at a lifetime of $451,000 and regular visits to the clinic and the uncertainty of being able to get the treatment at the right time and the resultant extra pain and other things, they would be willing to put an extra premium over and above that $451,000 in order to get the treatment. And as I mentioned earlier, our own value system of what we consider the value of a human life, how do we value an electric vehicle versus a once and done treatment for serious, painful lifetime chronic diseases. And also it's a question of corporate social responsibility. Okay, for CRISPR it costs that much. Can CRISPR Therapeutics and the government get together and come with some kind of tax incentives and other things which can encourage CRISPR Therapeutics to reduce the price by reducing the burden that the company will face if it is forced to deliver the same therapy at a much lower price. So in terms of pricing details, so if you look at 450,000, which is now the one-time cost for sickle cell disease treatment, and if you look at CTX001, which is a once and done, to the best of my knowledge, it's a once and done treatment. Already we have sample of a patient. I think I featured her in one of my earlier videos. She has been free of sickle cell disease for quite a while and is living a good quality of life. Can there be a premium in the pricing for younger people getting the treatment because they're going to enjoy pain-free treatment for a longer period of time, and maybe give a little bit of a leeway for older people because they're going to enjoy a lesser period of time without sickle cell disease? How we look at it, that's again another consideration. I think that will come into pricing, but 460K is a far cry from $2 million, which is the cost for making this therapy. Governments and employers would definitely benefit from not having to support ongoing sickle cell disease-related drop in productivity, the sick days off and all. So would they like to subsidize the treatment if they have an employee with sickle cell disease? That comes to corporate social responsibility. There'll be good companies that will be happy to do that and retain their employees. Or there may be unions which will try to get those things worked into collective bargaining agreement and get that for employees. That may subsidize that 2 million further by coming up with contributions maybe from the union and from the employer. So can a state enter into collective bargaining? So we have Louisiana as an example. I think they entered into a bargain with a subsidiary of Gilead for hepatitis C treatment, and they have been able to give statewide for their citizens, and that's a good model. So maybe something like that can be done, and a huge batch can be ordered at once, and then it brings in economy of scales, predictability of sales, and maybe all the 52 states do that, and maybe European Union decides to do that. So that changes the ball game altogether. But right now, when CRISPR Therapeutics is looking at the market alone by itself and looking at recovering the costs, it's $2 million per dose. So things can change. We don't know. Frankly, I have no idea about all the mechanics. These are some of the things that I've been able to ferret out from doing my own research. So can the government give tax credits? Yes, they're already giving tax credits for putting up plants. And I think NIH is also giving some tax credits for orphan drugs treatment and all. Maybe some more things in those kind of those models is worth getting into. Most innovations notably come from universities. Can the licensing be made universal without any payment? And will that reduce the cost of the drug? That is one thought that I have. I'm just throwing it out there. I would like you guys to comment in the comment section, because we don't have the community tab right now. So our interaction is only going to be through the comment section. Please put your comments. Let us be an interactive community so that we can derive more value. And should the NIH take over the task and product of research and development of therapies and produce the know-how to use pharma companies as manufacturing hubs? What I mean by that statement is that, let us say, universities are by default going to do the research. There will be PhD candidates and everybody and professors always looking at the cutting edge, and they are definitely going to produce a lot of research like they did with CRISPR, like they did with Cas9, and that they are going to do with other proteins, etc. Can NIH also get involved in research in specific areas, especially in orphan drugs areas, and tide over, taking the cost and then giving the know-how to pharma companies and using all these pharma companies more like manufacturers? I'm trying to draw a relationship between Apple, which has got the copyright for iPhone, but it doesn't manufacture the iPhone. It outsources it to Foxconn to manufacture iPhone. and then it comes back and Apple sells it under its name. So can we have a model like that where the universities come up with all those inventions and discoveries, and NIH also participates in it? In non-sexy areas where the universities may not find enough PhD candidates looking to put research, the universities may not find enough pharma companies willing to fund research for those kind of things can be taken over by NIH for research. And once those licenses comes in, maybe NIH becomes the central point where all the license would flow in, and NIH will farm it out to everybody by taking a commitment from them that they're going to produce and putting a price limit to it, and then receiving the finished product and distributing it off to hospitals. So there's a whole lot of possibilities then that can make these expensive therapies to be economically feasible. So we have to find out how it's going to work, and there'll be a lot of political problems in getting through with these kind of projects, because the conservative approach is always going to be that companies should own copyrights, they should do their own thing, and we should not be socialistic. The Democrats will be approaching from the point of view of making sure that everybody gets treatment, everybody gets insurance and all that stuff. So you can already see the collision happening. So it's quite possible that all these things might happen more in European Union as we go further ahead. The action may shift to European Union, and maybe things start happening from there and then coming to North America. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Can the government go a step further and remove all FDA fees and for CRISPR-related therapies? So that can also reduce the costs and uncertainties. So these are all the thoughts I have with regard to pricing and how this can be made possible. We cannot solve the problem at this point of time, and our objective is to do valuation exercise. So what I have here is based on the market price of shares as on 15th of March, when I did this exercise. At that time, Novartis was quoting at 84.73 and Pfizer was at 52.21. And I've taken their EPS and I've taken their book value. And the numbers that you see in green are factors. So 7.97 is 84.73, that is the share price, divided by 10.63, which is the EPS. So share price by EPS is a factor that I have taken there. I've done the same for Pfizer, and I've done the same for Tesla, for kicks. Likewise, I have divided the share price by book value, and I've got 2.79 for Novartis, 3.8 for Pfizer, and then I've taken an average for them just to standardize, because I didn't have the time to take 20 pharmaceutical companies. I've taken 2 of them, and I've selected these 2 because they have made a foray into genomics with the COVID vaccine, and Novartis with the CAR-T therapies. So I have taken those 2, and I've taken the average there. And in the next screen, what you're going to see is that I have used the same factor to compute the target price for CRISPR. So I have got the target price based on the EPS by share price by EPS factor to be 47.60 for CRISPR. And if we go by book value, it comes to 102.86 for CRISPR. And the current market price for CRISPR as on 15th of March was 60.04. So it's between these 2 ranges. And for BEAM, it was between 55.24. So BEAM is highly undervalued, in my opinion, based on this. Now, it all depends on our value system. If once and go sickle cell disease treatment is equal in value to Tesla, right? Which is a very, very generous assumption I'm making, because you can decide that you can live without a car, and you can decide that you can live with a gas car rather than the electric car. But with sickle cell disease, when a therapy is there for a once in a lifetime cure, that question doesn't come. The quality of the question is way different, and you're going to say, yes, I want it. And from a human rights perspective also, if there's a treatment, a person should get it. So it's a question of our value system, and that's where a democratic and a conservative approach will differ. That's where a socialistic and a capitalistic approach will differ. So CRISPR Therapeutics has got to find a home which can support the price so that it is viable to be produced and given to people. So coming back to the answer to that, so if we use the Tesla's factor out here in terms of share price by book value, the factor is 163.65. So the price of CRISPR should be 723.34 if we use that dynamic and that kind of a valuation here. And if we look at the book value, if we look at the share price by book value factor for Tesla and apply that to CRISPR, then CRISPR should be quoting at 911.10 as a target price. And likewise for BEAM, it's going to be negative 201.29 because BEAM doesn't have a positive EPS. And if we go by the book value, then BEAM should have a book value of 353.39 with that kind of a metrics. So this is my valuation, and I don't know what you're going to think about this. And I was a bit apprehensive putting this out on YouTube, but you know what? We need to take some amount of risks. And in this channel, I think we have a good community that is respectful and that engages in a very productive manner. So I'm putting this out there, and I would like you guys to give me your thoughts of what do you think about this valuation approach. Do you have any other approach for valuation that we could use? And let us try to work this out on subsequent weekends. Take some other company and try to work out some other valuation method, or even take a CRISPR and BEAM. I have taken CRISPR and BEAM here right now because they have got candidates in sickle cell therapy. The other dynamic that I have not explored is that if CRISPR gets the approval from FDA first and is able to come to market first, then what's going to happen to BEAM Therapeutics and its ability to price, and how is it going to work out? So I haven't done that exercise. So we'll have to wait and see what happens further. But I'm very, very curious to hear your feedback, and I look forward to that. Please put a like on this video. And if you're here for the first time, or if you have been watching the videos in this channel for a while, please subscribe. We want to go to the magical number of 500 subscribers so that we can have our community tab and start interacting in another forum. So that we can have much more dynamic conversations, not only between you and me, but also amongst yourself. And that will be a very good thing to see. So thanks and have a great day. I hope you have a great weekend. Bye for now.